what I would like to talk about today is how AI affects book writing and the progress that we've had around AI and writing books. And I initially wrote a few poems and novels when I was more a teenager, and it was definitely before AI. And after that, in 2023, I wrote and published my first book, which was for software engineers. It was about mindset, about passion, so it's more of a self-help type of book. And then in 2024, I wrote my second book, which is around technology. So it's a software engineering language, and I describe it and give some examples. In 2025, we launched an application with AI books on it that we were selling to people to read. And now we're working on a tool that helps authors and writers to create their own books. So I kind of went from the journey before AI, publishing something before that, then in the inception of AI, and at this point as well. So it's been a lot of interesting developments and a lot of insights on the way. And this is something that I'm going to present to you today. So when I started in 2023 writing my first big book, I thought that most of the time that will be spent on the book is going to be around figuring out what I want to write, but actually it was everything but that. Because when you try to create a comprehensive long work, first you need to actually make the structure for it and divide it in specific chapters and think through how chapter 1 will be connected to chapter 10, how the suggestions that you give in the first one will affect what is going to be written in the end of the book. And if you later change something in the middle of the book, you also might need to adapt something in the beginning and in the end. So the planning phase and outlining what's going to be included takes a decent amount of time, and I would say for one page you would also need to spend an hour planning it. After that, when you already know what you want to write about roughly, you would also probably spend an hour purely writing the book, writing the chapter. And after that, you would spend from hour to 2 hours on editing, because when you finish, you send it to somebody. It can be a professional editor or just your friend to give you commands on what's working, what's not working, grammar, typos. So after that, you integrate all of that and you resolve it and you improve the chapter. And that part is actually the most time consuming in the whole writing. At least it was for me in 2023. So it's a big creative work, but most of the things that you're gonna be spending your time on is grunt work. It's not extremely exciting, at least it was not for me. I know some authors like to focus on editing and improving and rewriting, but for me it felt kind of unnecessary. I just really wanted to put my thoughts, my ideas to people. And for that, the whole process of editing and changing the grammar and typos seemed kind of unnecessary. And on this whole book, which is 200 pages, I spent around 600 hours. So it's a lot of time you actually need to dedicate to write the book. And like on this one already, I started using AI a little bit, but it was not very helpful at that point. And since then, we went a very long way, actually. So in 2023, it was the first point of AI inception for books, because what you can do is that you can send your raw chapter with raw content that can have grammar mistakes, style mistakes, and attaching also your writing styles and the examples of how you write, you can edit it. So in 2023, it was already possible to use AI, and at that point it was GPT-4 that you could use as an editor for a book. And it was already, like, it came a bit later in the journey when I was writing the book, so I only managed to use it on the last 40% of the book, but it already helped so much, because I didn't need to go through the process of editing and just fixing things like grammar. So it saved me a lot of time. but it still was not powerful enough, so you cannot really produce really good ideas. It didn't help me with the structure or connecting the dots, so it was very limited on what it could do. And in 2024, it started changing. So at that point, the style improved, so you need a little bit less observation and guidance on how to write, so it was just better in style. At the same time, you can come from bullet points to the whole chapter if you also provide your writing style. And because I was writing a technical book, which is not extremely creative, I actually managed to mostly go from content, which was code for me at that time, to the whole written chapter, because it would be just explaining the code and giving some examples around it. So I didn't really spend much time writing the chapter itself or editing it. AI was just very helpful at that. And also in 2024, it was the start of AI-generated covers, which after that improved very much. But when we tried to generate it in 2024, it looks something like this. So it was something, but I mean, like some details were wonky, I would say. Then 2025 comes, and it was a major breakthrough in writing and content generation and AI in general, because a few better models than GPT came out and became the leaders for authors. And one of them that is still favored until these days is Claude, because it's just very good in writing style, and it's often preferred LLM by authors in pure overall quality. Also, Gemini 2.5 Pro came out, which had an extremely long context. So it can actually store your whole book in the context window and make meaningful suggestions and like stick it together and not lose the thread throughout it. Also, Grok 4 came out, which would not really say when you try to generate things with it. And it was helpful for explicit content and also just some other pieces that normal LLMs would just not talk about. And actually, they are kind of limited in what they would agree to talk. And for example, citation of Bibles is often marked by Gemini 2.5 as copyright issue, even though you probably the author would not mind that much. And also in summer of 2025, Nano Banana came out, so we could generate really, really high quality images and covers. And you don't really want to have photographic quality there. You can pretty much generate illustrations or just interesting styles. So it was enough to actually cover the whole cover generation process. You could just use Nano Banana, a little bit of prompting, and it solved like a solved problem in general. And with all of this in mind, when we saw all of that breakthrough, we also noticed that there is a big platform that advertise romance books. So first they have their own pipeline, how they produce books, mostly with authors. It's mostly focused on romance. And after that, they sell their books through the apps. And we had an idea like, oh, we have AI, it's kind of good. Can we actually use it to write the book end to end and build a pipeline on that? And what we ended up with is a multi-step pipeline. And what we found is very useful for AI is, and in general for the book writing process, is to separate it in very distinct processes. So we started with defining the characters. After that, we would identify the book. We would start with book metadata. Then we would continue with characters, writing very detailed about their motivation, about their progression in the book, internal, external conflict. Then we would continue with book outline. After that, we would go into writing the specific chapters, then editing the chapters. I mean, all of the steps are done by AI with putting a file out, putting a result, putting a file in, getting a result out, and chaining it to the other steps of this process. Then, like in the end, we generate some metadata about the book. The whole process of creating a piece would take 30 minutes around, and it also took us around $10 using different models through this process to generate a book. And Quality was kind of fine because a lot of romance books that exist there on those apps that we are trying to replicate are not extremely deep content, I would say. So it's kind of a quick write, quick read kind of books. And there was a lot of repetition there, familiar tropes. So AI was like, it was a good target for AI to actually manage to write it. And it did it very well. So after we improved it a few times, we put it on the app. And very interesting thing that we were observing after that is, will somebody say that it's AI? Will somebody notice and like call us out and say, I'm not gonna read it, it's all AI written or something? And until this day, even though we have play market reviews, we have our internal feedback field where you can comment, nobody has written that it's produced by AI. And that was like the first mind-blowing moment to me, that nobody kind of noticed a difference between these works and the real author's works, which is interesting because quality was not perfect. It was still like somewhere there, but still kind of wonky. And what we identified very useful is actually to use detailed description in every step. So when we define characters, we would need to identify all of the list of characters, then how they look, what their personality is, what drives them, how they progress through the book, what they try to, internal battles, external battles. So the more details we gave to structure at every point, the better the books came out, because it kind of shows what you want to create. Without it, they were very repetitive. And the story Bible is an extremely crucial point, because it allows the AI to actually keep the context and not go out of it. Because first, when you plan the book, you just write very shortly, very dense, to the minimal details what happens in this chapter. And for that, you don't need 2,000 words. Typically, the plot events come to 100, 200 words, and you can describe everything what actually happens there. You could also identify locations, characters, twists, target word count for this specific book. And then, with using this, you can pretty much isolate the chapter and write an extended chapter version out of it. So the chapter outline was used to keep the consistency, and then we'd use just one with writing samples to produce a book chapter. And the quality was like very, very decent. And for forward a little bit to now, there is a range of models that are very, very useful and kind of frontier for different purposes. And it changes monthly, so like in half a year, it probably will be very different names. But as of now, Gemini 3 Flash is a very, very good general purpose model, because it's very quick, very cheap, and produces good writing quality, and it follows instructions very well. Claude Sonnet and Claude Opus is pretty much the same thing for writing. It's just extremely good style, but it's also very expensive for writing a lot of content. And Opus 4.6 is just good in sparring with it about the ideas, it's the best logic-related LLMs that we found out is used for books. Grok 4.1 is just another improvement that still doesn't refuse to generate much, so you can use it for some, I don't know, bloody fantasy battles or more explicit content in general. Gemini 3 Pro Image, which is another one I still think is the same name, which generates just great cover. You cannot really tell at this point, if you use it well, whether it's generated with AI or not, typically. And ElevenLabs is extremely great with narration. So you can both clone your voice and narrate a book and turn it into an audiobook. And it's very important that you might not even tell that it's ElevenLabs and not the author itself reading the book out loud. We also try to tackle two different problems in the, and also help them to write non-fiction books. And the problems for those two are a little bit different, because when you write fiction, you want to focus on the style, on detailed descriptions, on emotions that it brings, on twists, on how the plot develops, how the characters develop. While in non-fiction, you focus a little bit more on precision and whether you can use external reference files, and whether you can research some things online and put it in the book and use citations on it. So the problems are a little different,
It also, the process to write them a little bit different. Like you would not need characters for non-fiction books typically. You would also probably not need plot events as on detail level as for fiction. So what we found works really good for, in terms of citations, is still Claude Sonnet, just because it's a bit cheaper than Opus, but Opus is much better in quality as well, with citations. So you can use it together with the materials, and then when it writes the chapter, it will also cite the materials that it used to write this or that paragraph. Yeah, and in general, some insights just about the field. We needed to have, I've had a lot of interviews with authors, and at this point, I have not really met any modern author that writes now that doesn't use AI, and at the same time, nobody admits it to the public. Like nobody likes to say that they use AI, and it's very understandable. There was a research, I think it was a year ago, about poems, that when readers try to give a score to a poem written by AI, if they don't know that it's AI, they score it higher than human written poems. If they do, they score it much lower. So people don't really like to read AI, don't really like to touch AI generated content, even though actually it might be on average higher quality. So we understand why authors typically don't mention that they use AI, apart from the moments when they want to explicitly play on it, because there are some authors that run it as an experiment and then they want to showcase it. And what we see is that authors that used to write 2 books per year now came to a speed of writing around 12. So it's still a very long process, but it's 6 times more, and they say that the quality is still there. It's just amazing books, but they use AI in so many different parts to accelerate the process, help them with generation, help them with editing, help with keeping the previous story consistent with this one, and things like that. The concern number 1 is still about whether AI written content will sound like me, because it's extremely important. You don't want to produce just general ChatGPT written chapter. It's very distinguishable from your style, and people will quickly spot it out at this point. So you want to teach AI and showcase how it is to write like you. And it's still a thing that's almost solved, but not fully solved. So we see around 80–90% overlap. So if you use the best models, in terms of, so if you try to ask AI to write a chapter in your style, you provide decent examples, decent guidance, most of the readers will not spot that it's somewhat different, but the authors will still notice some small details that are different. As the result of the whole AI part and AI change, there is so much AI slop on KDP, which is a platform, Amazon self-publishing platform to publish your own books. So everybody can put their books out there, like put $3 price on it and start selling it. And it's very, very popular to see a lot of AI generated slop. So people just like put it through ChatGPT, write a book under 10 minutes, generate the cover with Nanobanana, they just like put it out there. So it's around, I've seen the number that now there's 10 times as many books put on KDP per hour as it used to be just 2 years ago. So the number is insane, and the quality of most of them is not really good, because it's not even well-used AI that you can truly integrate, that you can use to benefit, but it was mostly just like some generating a book with this title, put it on KDP. Yes, so at this point, there are still a lot of limitations with what AI cannot achieve or cannot excel at. And one of those I already mentioned, it's voice, which is very important. It's just not there 100% yet. Another one is non-English languages. It's really, really good in English, but if you try to go to if you try to go to French, for example, it will be a little bit worse, but it's still a very popular language. If you try to go some smaller language of a country that is not as recognized by the world, in terms there's not as many words there outlined, quality drops significantly to the point that it will just generate nonsensical sentences that don't make sense together. So we still see it, and it's kind of surprising, but also understandable because there's not as much data to train the models on. The next one is word count. Still cannot get it right. If you ask it to generate 3,000 models, 3,000 words per chapter, all of the models will generate random amount from 2,000 to 4,000. You can fix it for sure, but just very interesting that there is such a big degree of error here. Long context is, and probably will to a big extent, be the main limitation, because even though the modern labs support very big context windows, at the same time, when you go out of approximately 50,000 characters, the quality just degrades very much, and it's just not very consistent. And if you want to write book series, it's just also so much context that you cannot really keep it together consistently. Yeah, so what are the next steps, how I see them? When you write books, it's just an art process and you want to stand out, and there's a few things that authors tend to do that we've noticed that they do. One is converting it to audiobooks, just providing a different modality. Another one is focusing on more visual elements. The next one is actually doing book series, because it's hard to do with AI, so the authors that manage to either do it with AI or still do it by hand have a fan base that actually enjoys reading multiple stories in a row. And also multilingual, because it's still hard to do with AI, so some authors write it manually or just target bigger languages and just translate their books automatically. And just to summarize, it's for sure, like with all the other things, AI didn't replace authors, even though it can seem that you can just like produce a book like that. You really cannot. But what it replaced is the 600 hours of grunt work, and now you can really focus on the creativity. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you for that. We're going to open up for questions from the audience, but first, I have to say, I mean, you're really infuriating a lot of people right now. Yeah. I know there are some writers in the audience, and honestly, like, how should, first of all, how should writers think about this right now, except from, the 6 month work? Is it just that, or are there any concerns? What are you most worried about in the space right now?
What I'm worried about the space and how they should approach using AI.
Both. So first of all, let's deal with the first one. How should I think about this?
I think the main point is that it's a great help. So one of the things that I noticed is that you can improve the quality. Now you just got a tool to help you with the point that were time-consuming or hard. If you still focus on producing the best quality book, you will still stand out. And I don't think that just regular AI pipelines or AI swap can replace great authors.
No. And what are you worried about losing? I mean, for you as a writer, for your voice, your perspective, what are you worried about losing when using technology like this?
I think one is that it's also hard to stand out, because when there's so many books, the space gets populated. So you need to try really, really hard. And I'm sure there's some authors that are trying hard but will never be noticed because AI swap is just like all over the place. I think it's a very big problem. And I'm not sure it's solvable even.
So there's going to be harder competition for regular writers. And how do you see the traditional, a lot of the publishing industry right now are looking at this as a novelty, right? They're not perhaps taking it as seriously as they should. Have you seen any indications or signals on how they're actually looking at this, or?
I have an insight.
Oh, you have an insight.
I don't have any proofs, but most of the books that we see in low quality apps that sell them, like Galatea and things like, there's a lot of publishers that produce works in the house and then they sell them. 90% are written by AI. They are not authors written. I mean, they are either AI enhanced, so these are human authors writing with AI, or they have the complete pipelines in the same way we did in 2025.
Okay,
it's all a lie.
It's all a lie. Thank you for a great talk. We're going to open up to the audience. Any writers in the room that actually writes? Anyone who has some thoughts? No, I'm going to get to you. Yes.
Yeah. So I have this project I've been working on for many years, and the other day I managed to. Yeah. So I have this project I've been working on for many years, right? It's a series and whatever, and we finally started making the the pilot episode, because I managed to fix a studio a while back, right? And I remember, like, I wanted all my lines to be done by voice actors and people that I know. Even myself, I did like 3 characters. But because I don't know a lot of female people, actors and voice actors, I had to revert to, ElevenLabs. And it was simply one line, partly. But yeah, so it's really good to see, like, you know, that we're evolving to a point where, you know, very minuscule lines can be basically outsourced for, you know, pilots and, you know, directors with not a lot of money. And also comics, I guess, yeah.
Can I ask, the writers that I know are here, and I don't usually put my audience on the spot, but what's your reaction to seeing this? What's your like gut feeling if it's negative? Like, anything? Any thoughts?
I think, yeah, it's scary, I guess, that people can write with AI in this kind of mass, you know. But I also know that it's a good tool if you need to brainstorm. But I don't know, I'm just a little bit in shock. Yeah, but I also know that if you just ask AI to write something, then it's still not really good. So you have to have kind of a creative leader or a writer to actually be there and look through everything. So hopefully.
And just a quick question though, what's the limitations? I mean, obviously there are a lot of discussions on originality and AI regressing to the mean. Now, of course, we have some studies indicating that you can't tell the difference, but what's your thought on that? On originality and using sort of will everything just be sort of regressing to the mean? Will it be bland and boring and uninteresting?
I don't think that AI is incapable of creativity. It's just like creativity is variance, so increase the variance and it will generate random noise, which is creativity. So I think that will be solved, but at the same time, when you just generate a book 20 times with ChatGPT with a simple prompt, it will generate the same book. So I don't know, it's like somewhere there. I think it's solvable, it's not solved yet.
I would worry that taking away the 600 hours of grunt work might make lots of people lazy. Because isn't it so that in the 600 hours of grunt work is where you will find the gems. That's where the real creativity lies, banging your head against the wall again and again and again.
I think the general thing about AI, because I'm a software engineer, I no longer write code by hand, which is just gone. I generate all of it. Will be able to write code in 2 years? I doubt it. Will my critical thinking go down because of it? Yes, if I don't train it otherwise. And it's the same issue, like you still need to keep it up, train it in some way, so you're still sharp at it. And most people probably won't, and that's sad.
I really like that industry experts who normally never thought about writing a book can easily do so, translating their experience into valuable words. But what would be the point of writing a book if I can just ask my AI to tailor a program that already knows everything, because a lot of other people are also giving it their knowledge. So for example, my ChatGPT now is very trained on my word process.
What's the difference between
Well,
these?
I could ask it to give me a guide. I mostly read non-fiction. I could just ask it to give me a guide specifically tailored to my learning style instead of reading a book. So what if everyone stops reading a book?
I actually think a lot of people have stopped. Like, why would you read a book if you can ask ChatGPT for the knowledge?
Why do people not write books? Well, why should people write books if they're not reading?
People still find it fun. Some people try to sell it as well. It's still a source of income, but I know for a lot of it just a source of joy and creativity. And for those people, it also doesn't matter that AI is there. if you enjoy the process, you will still write a book with or without AI. You'll probably automate the parts that are not fun for you. You'll still continue doing the fun parts.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be so critical. I really.
No.
Hi. Thank you very much for your presentation. First of all, I would like to say this is very old. Even Salvador Dali, we know that he didn't paint everything. That people were painting for him, and for some authors also they use, people to help them. So I think it's new technologies, but to cheat, it's not very new. Do you think there should be a law that would, authors like you who use AI should label that is like 90% is AI or 100% is AI?
We kind of divided on it because then we'll see on all of the websites written by AI. No, what I'm thinking about, there is kind of bias against people. People don't read AI, and it's kind of, you're just biased because it's AI, but what if it's better quality, like in that sense? And I think that part isn't fair, and the same part, it is fair to give some advantage to people that's still trying to do it the hard way, and you probably can find more creativity in that, like reading original works that were not produced by AI. So it's a hard question, like both things make sense in a way.
Yes?
Is there any reason why you didn't show me what
They didn't want it to be very salesy in that sense, because it's also the platform that we are building now that produces the books. But I can show you afterwards some of those. But it's also that most of the books that I wrote myself, like the last full published book was in 2024, and then we were writing on the platform so I can show the examples of AI-generated books.
So if I would like to read examples and I would like to explore your platform, where do I go? How can I find it?
The platform is called AIWriteBook.com. And also with my name, we actually, just an example, we published, I have 3 books on my Amazon. One is The Rational Software Engineer, the second one is TypeScript 5, with more AI use, it's like technical book. And the last one is Cookies and Mystery, or something like that. I wanted just to show an example for our platform, and I published it from my account, so I have like a very interesting track record right now. But yeah, I think you can find one of the examples there as well.
Excellent. We have a fun. Hi, thank you for an interesting presentation. I've heard a claim that the Chinese models are very good at creative writing. And the reason is that they're not that concerned about copyright. Is that something you look into?
Chinese models? So I didn't quite.
So the Chinese are making quite good language models, like for example DeepSeek. There are some claims that these are better at creative writing.
Actually, I haven't tried it. I haven't. I've experienced with Opus, Gemini, GPT, and Claude, right? So like these 4 for this process, but I have not tried more. There's so many models, you also cannot really try them all, but by the benchmark, these 4 are still like frontier. DeepSeek is not that far behind, so I know some people use it for.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. I'm not a writer, my sister, she writes TV series in Germany for big TV stations. And so I know her process, and I wouldn't be so concerned. She's very concerned, I'm not. And the reason is that non-fiction is AI's corner, right? They know everything. We can never catch up with it, so that's fine. But fiction is about imperfection. So imperfection is what attracts humans to other humans. We like imperfection. And imperfection, I can come up with. We know imperfection. We like to read about suffering and stuff like that, so we can only come up with this shit. We know over and over again how to destroy ourselves, so the world. So that imperfection is what makes it interesting. I don't think AI will ever catch up to that, how much shit we can steal. So I'm not worried. Just focus on the creative part.
Yeah, I think like the point there's still 1% in every occupation that does such an amazing job that I'm not sure I will be able to replicate. It's like counts for 1% of authors, 1% of software engineers, It's just the commodity part of it, like the 90%, it probably can be replicated. But those exceptional works, I think they might still come from people without the AI.
Great, I like that. I like closing on that. Thank you, Mykyta, for an amazing presentation. I think there's a record number of questions for one presentation. Congratulations. Give him a great round of applause. Thank you. Det var det vi hadde for i dag.